Okay, now we're going to get more specific and we're going to look at two special right triangles. And these are special right triangles because the ratio is always the same. So we don't have to do the Pythagorean theorem every time when we have to find missing sides. We can just use these ratios. Okay, so you just got to memorize these ratios or have them written down. Okay, the first one is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and the second one is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And these are the angles inside. So here's my 90 with the box. And so a 45, 45 means that these two angles in here are both 45. So I might tell you it's a 45, 45 by putting a 45 in the angle. Or if my angles are the same, those opposite sides are the same. So I could also give you tick marks, and you have to also know that's a 45, 45, just like down here. Because of those tick marks, this one's going to be a 45, 45, 90 triangle. The 30, 60, 90, okay, I have my 90 there. Then there's going to be a 30 and a 60. Okay, the ratios I'm about to give you, you can get by doing the Pythagorean theorem, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to go ahead and give you the ratios that you have to remember. All right, so the first one is my 45, 45. So if I were to call this side over here x, because this is isosceles, that means this side is also x, right? Because your tick marks talk about it being congruent. And then if I want the hypotenuse, it's going to be whatever the side is times root 2. All right, so that's just a ratio that you have to remember. All right, 30, 60, 90 is a little bit different. Let me change colors here. Okay, my legs of the triangle, which your legs are the sides that are not the hypotenuse. So the legs of the triangle for a 30, 60 are different. For the 45, 45, they're the same, so I can just call them both x. For the 30, 60, the angles are different, so that means that my sides are different. Okay, so we're going to differentiate, and I'm going to call the one that's opposite the 30 my short leg. Okay, the short leg, I'm going to put a star next to it, is the one that we need. That's what we base everything else on. Okay, the one that's opposite the 60 is the long leg, and then you have your hypotenuse. Okay, so the short leg is the one that we want. That's the one that I'm going to call x. So everything's based on whatever x is. To get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, we times it by 2. So we have a 2x. And then to get from the short leg to the long leg, I multiply it by root 3. So 45, 45 works with root 2. And then the 30, 60, 90 works with root 3. Okay, if you think about it, for the 45, 45, I only have two different angles. I got 45 and I got 90, so I work with root 2. For the 30, 60, 90, I have three different angles, so I'm going to work with root 3. But again, you just have to memorize it. All right, so for number 1, for all of these, I want to find all of the different sides of the triangle that I don't have. Okay, so for here, I've got a 5, so I want to find my other two sides. Because I have a tick mark on both of these, that tells you that they're the same. So this one has to be a 45, 45, 90. All right, because they're both the same, I can go ahead and fill in a 5 down there because the legs are the same length. Okay, then to go from my leg to the hypotenuse, I'm going from x to x root 2. So I'm just going to make that a 5 root 2. Okay, for the second one, I'm given my hypotenuse. Okay, I'm not given the legs, but I know that my legs are going to be the same, but I got to figure out what the legs are. All right, so another little tidbit. If I'm getting bigger, I multiply. If I'm getting smaller, I divide. And what I mean by that is that the hypotenuse is the longest side. So if I'm going from leg to hypotenuse, I'm getting bigger because the hypotenuse is the biggest. That's as far as I can go. So I multiplied. I took whatever the leg was times root 2. But here I'm going from hypotenuse to leg. So I'm getting smaller. So that means I'm going to have to divide by root 2. So it's the same ratio, but to get there I multiply. To get back, I divide. So I'm going to do 14 divided by root 2. Okay, and I'm going to leave it as a radical, but I can't leave it like this. Okay, this is that bad math grammar that we talked about. So if I have a radical on the bottom, I have to rationalize. So to rationalize, I'm going to multiply by that radical on top and on bottom. So the top becomes 14 root 2 because I can't combine a non-radical with a radical. And then on the bottom, remember if I square it, it ends up just canceling out and I'm left with 2. But I'm not quite done yet. I can simplify. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I have 7 root 2. So that means both of these sides are 7 root 2. For the third, fourth, and fifth one, I'm switching over to 30, 60, 90s because they all have at least a 30 or a 60 written in there. Right? And then every time I do these, I'm going to find the 30-degree angle and I'm going to draw an arrow to the opposite side. Right? And that's important because I need that short side that's opposite the 30. So for number 4, I'm given the 60, which means that this has to be my 30. So I'm going to draw an arrow to the opposite side. And same thing here. I need the 30, draw an arrow to the opposite side. That opposite side is the first number that I need. I need my x to be able to get to x root 3 and to 2x. All right, so here I'm given x, so I'm just going to multiply. My short leg is the shortest leg on that triangle. So if I go from short to long and short to hypotenuse, I'm getting bigger every time. So I'm going to multiply. So here I've got 16 times 2 to get to my hypotenuse, and then 16 times root 3 to get to the long leg. That's it. Once you have the short leg, you multiply by 2, you multiply by root 3, done. For number 4, I'm not given the short leg. So that's the first thing I have to find. What I'm given is my hypotenuse. So if I want to go from 2x to x, I got to get rid of that 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. So my short leg ends up being 12 divided by 2, which is 6. And then once I have my short leg, all I have to do is multiply. So I'm going to take my short leg times root 3 to get the long leg. Right? And then number 5, same kind of idea. I need the short leg, and I'm not given that yet, so I have to divide to get there. But what I'm given is my long leg. So to go from long to short, I got to get rid of that root 3. All right? So I'm going to end up doing 4 divided by root 3. But we can't leave it that way. Got to rationalize. So I'm left with 4 root 3 over 3. 4 over 3 doesn't simplify. So I'm going to leave that one. That's going to make it a little ugly. But to go from short to hypotenuse, I need to multiply by 2. So I'm going to have 4 root 3 over 3 times 2. Okay, that's like 2 over 1. Right? So if I multiply the top, remember you can multiply non-radicals, you can multiply radicals, but you can't combine them. So all I'm going to do here is 4 times 2. So that's going to be an 8. Leave the root 3 like it is, and then 3 times 1 is 3. So the hypotenuse is 8 root 3 over 3. Not the prettiest, but same idea. If I'm getting bigger, I multiply. If I'm getting smaller, I divide. And for the 30, 60, 90s, I have to have that short leg. That's the first thing we have to find. All right, then I can go from there to find my long leg and the hypotenuse.